Even the Prophet Muhammad, in prophecies of the end of time, he said, what happened to the Christians and the Jews will happen to you also, you Muslims. And they were like, well, what do you mean? Soon you will divide like the branches of a tree. There will be 72 versions of Christians, and only one of the versions is on the true path. This is what the Prophet Muhammad said. There'll be 72 versions of Judaism, only one goes on the true path. He said there'll be 73 versions.
Well, we don't know what anybody
of Islam.
said. We don't really know what the fuck anybody said.
We weren't there. But
we weren't there. Neither were the people who wrote the fucking Bible.
But he said we would be more divided than those religions themselves. So imagine now, we talk about how this man is supposed to be full of whatever. He said that the Islamic faith would divide, it would splinter and fraction off, and that there would be more versions than even the Christians and the Jews have. This is in his tradition.
Yeah.
And that's happened. He predicted ISIS, by the way. I can give you his prophecy. He said, soon there will be those that come out from us, meaning out from the Muslims. They will grow their hair long like women's hair. Go look at the pictures of fucking ISIS, bro. They'll have long hair. He said, soon they will raise black banners, and wherever they go, they will cause fitna, meaning they will cause destruction. And when you wipe out one group, another group will pop up in its place. This is his words. He says, and you will know who they are, for they will name themselves after cities and towns. Who was the leader of ISIS? Al-Baghdadi, right?
Oh, Al-Baghdadi, yeah.
This is his prophecy. He said, towards the end of time, there'll be groups that claim to be from us. If you see them praying, you will say these people are righteous. But they're not. He says they're the wood of the fire. This was his prophecy. They will be the wood of the fire. And if you hear of them, don't join their ranks. Imagine now. This is the Prophet Muhammad's words, peace be upon him. He predicted ISIS and terrorism. He said there would be groups that claim to be from us. This is in our prophecy. There's no fucking... Like, you guys are all debating and stuff. The Muslims are like, this is the first time the Muslim scholars are like, it looks like we're probably, like, we're getting close to the end of time. Like, the Christians have been saying Jesus is coming. We believe he's coming too. But this is the first time, like, our scholars are like, it's not looking too good. Like, it might actually be the time soon. Like, the Prophet Muhammad said that towards the end of time, the buildings of Mecca would reach for the skies. If you look at Saudi Arabia today, they even built a massive clock tower. He even said, soon the time will come where the shadow of time covers the Kaaba. Kaaba is that black box that the Muslims pray towards. They don't worship it for your tools in the comments.
The black box?
You know, the box in Mecca that all the Muslims paint. Pull up Kaaba, man.
How do you spell it?
K-A-B-A-A.
Kaaba black box?
The black cube.
The black cube.
That the Muslims pray towards. Pull up an image of that. So now, pull up that picture towards the right. You got these guys out there trying to say, the Muslims, they worship the box. No, we don't worship the box, because during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, they used to get on top of the box and call prayer. You're not going to stand on top of your own idol. Could you imagine a Hindu standing on top of a statue of Shiva? Or a Christian standing on top of a statue of Jesus? Oh, they worship the black stone. No, we don't. There's a concept in Islam known as niyyah. Niyyah means the intention.
Where's this thing?
This is in the heart of Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
We believe that this is where Abraham constructed the temple to worship the one God. He left his wife in the wilderness. Now, you see that clock tower?
Yeah.
That's one of the signs of the end of the world in Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, please double research this stuff. Please double check my references, because if I make an error, I'm responsible for the information that I give you as a human being to God. I'm responsible to God, not to Danny Jones, not to Google, to God. If I give you information that's incorrect or that can manipulate your opinion without giving you facts. His prophecy towards the end of time is that soon the buildings of Mecca will reach for the sky. The mountains will be pierced, which they just did. They built tunnels right through the mountains. Okay, he said this during his life. And he said, this is well recorded, he said that soon the shadow of time will cover that black box. At the time, they were looking at, well, shadow of time. How can time have a shadow? You can't see time, right?
You think he was talking about a clock tower?
Look, when that sun goes behind that tower, it casts its shadow over the box. They call it the saha, which literally means the watch. The locals call it time, the time tower. How could he have known, man? How did he know 1,400 years ago? How did he know that he said, soon the Bedouins of our people, look at the deserts of Arabia 67 years ago. Is this fucking sand there? and a bunch of camel riders, literally. Milking the camels and drinking the milk and eating dates. And hee-haw, motherfucker. That's what they were doing out there, okay? Today, the biggest skyscrapers in the world, where are they?
Dubai.
That's right. He said soon the time will come where the Bedouins of our people will compete with one another to build buildings that touch the sky. These are his exact fucking words. Not, oh, I'm guessing. He says one will build one and then the other one will say, I can build one bigger than you.
What year was this again? 600?
This is in the 600s.
Yeah.
We're talking this started 40 years ago over there. How did the Prophet Muhammad know if he wasn't from divine influence? I dare people to research the signs of the end of the world in Islam. I fucking dare you to. How did he know about this?
I mean, you think it's that much of a stretch to be able to predict that people would build skyscraper towers?
Yeah, but think about it. He said from their people, not anyone else. They were a fucking joke before he came. They were like a forgotten civilization.
Well, maybe he was just talking about people in general.
And he said the Bedouins, and he described how they're going to boast. And think about it. That's what they're doing. They're having a race between each other to build skyscrapers. I'm going to build it. Oh, yeah, Saudi Arabia. We're going to build one bigger than you. It's exactly what he said. He said soon the time will come where a man becomes a woman and a woman becomes a man. And they will dress like one another. The family unit will be destroyed and the bastards will take over. Bastard children. Children born out of wedlock, they will be so full of rage, they will destroy all those that are around them. That's the fucking country we're in right now. The bastard generation. You said that on my first time with you, but I was right about it. The bastard generation, 90% out of wedlock. These children are full of rage. They commit 90% of violent crime because they don't have a father. Because their mother didn't want them. They were conceived with no love. Therefore, they show no love to the world. They were conceived out of deadly sins, and that's why all we have from them is death and chaos. This is the bastard generation. He predicted that also. He said that the war of all wars would start over the Euphrates River. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but that's the footwork. Syria, Iraq, Iran, Turkey. That's the Euphrates. He said a war will start there that will engulf the whole entire world. It'll be basically Armageddon. Basically Armageddon, that supposedly there's something under that river, under the Euphrates River, that the whole entire world's going to fight over. Maybe they already know, man. Maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe these powers that be already know. Maybe they read the prophecy and they went to go see what's under that river. What is under that river of the Euphrates? This is also in the Bible, by the way, that when the Euphrates River runs dry, there's end of the world stuff. But in any event, this is an episode on its own where we can go over prophecy of the end of the world in Islam. And I'd like to pick it up maybe the next time around. It would be an amazing episode. Just talk about the signs of the end of the world and maybe the correlations to Christian doctrine.
Do you think Jesus really was a divine being? Do you think he really was? Like
I don't think he was God.
Who was
no,
God's son?
he was sent by the divine. So he was created the same way Adam was, or John the Baptist. God blew his soul into Mary's womb, but he didn't physically, do something with Mary. John the Baptist's parents never had physical relations to make him. They were too old. His father was way past the age, and his mother was barren. She had no eggs. Jesus' cousin. Yeah, he had two parents, but they didn't have physical intercourse to create him. I don't know if a lot of people understand that. So yes, Jesus' birth was miraculous in the fact he had no father and there was no one physically there to get her pregnant. And I do believe that as a Muslim. And it sounds crazy. You believe in a fairy tale. You've lost your fucking mind. Right. Like, that's one thing like Muslims and Christians should laugh about. Like, everyone thinks we're fucking crazy that we believe in this woman Mary who got pregnant with no man.
Right.
Muslims and Christians. So like,
you believe that the fucking sun and the moon stood still because a man on earth commanded them to, or you believe some guy actually stood here on earth and talked face to face with God? Do you believe these crazy fairy tales? You believe? I mean, something that goes so against nature. Like if I told you
common sense, not even nature, just common sense.
If I told you I had a conversation with God face to face, came down, sat in my studio yesterday, Beck, I literally talked to God yesterday. He was standing right there. Would you believe me?
I probably wouldn't. Do you know why I accepted Islam? It was because so many scientific miracles that couldn't be explained were in that book. I challenge anyone that's listening to this. Google scientific miracles of the Holy Quran. So for me, the reason I accept those stories of Jesus walking on water and bringing people back from the dead and Moses part of the Red Sea is not using my own logic. It's using X plus Y equals Z. I believe there is a God. There's enough scientific evidence, to me at least, to prove that there's a creator. Leaving denomination out of it all. I just don't find it anything to be random. Meaning, if the sun wasn't where it is, the 7 layers of the atmosphere, trees give us oxygen, we give them what they need, and I can go on and on and on. Like thousands of points that need to be perfect for us to even exist and to be having this conversation right now.
Right.
Like millions of points that need to be in order for you to even exist, which makes me think of this verse from the Holy Quran of which of the favors of your Lord do you deny? And it goes through this whole list that God's basically
that's what I'm trying to get at.
speaking
Is
in
that
first person.
because it is so incredible that we are here and that we exist, and that we were the created. When was the first human? How was the first human created? How was the first plant photosynthesis? How does all this shit work? If you ascribe it to God, then it's reasonable.
I believe the earth was created long before humans. I've spoke about this in our episode when we did aliens and demons. A lot of this subject matter is there, and I don't want people to get bogged down on this episode, but we spoke about this on the last pod. So go back and check it out, folks. But
that was last December.
For me, for example, let's just pull up one of these. Go ahead, scroll down, buddy. Let me just give you an example of what drew me to Islam. Do the Big Bang Theory, number 2.
Big Bang.
Here we go. So in Surah Al-Anbiya, okay, also states, this is what God says in the Quran. Chapter 21, what did he do there? Okay, chapter 21 of the Holy Quran, verse 30. What did he do here? So, have those who disbelieved not considered that the heavens and the earth were a joint entity and we separated them. In 1929, American astronomer Edwin Hubble proposed the Hubble's law, according to which all entities in space are moving away from Earth at speeds proportional to their distance. The greater the distance from Earth, the faster they are moving. Soon after this, he discovered that galaxies are moving away from each other, meaning the universe is still expanding, right? Continue down. The Big Crunch theory, like all these things that are now being proven were in this book. This is the most fascinating one, by the way. This one blew my mind away.
Embryology?
In the Surah Mu'min, which means the chapter of the believer in Islam. It says in chapter 23 of the Quran, verse 12, we created man from an extract of clay. We made him as a drop in a place of settlement firmly fixed.
Yeah.
Then we made the drop into a leech suspended thing. He describes exactly.
Yeah. There's echoes of the Sumerian text in here.
The 4 stages of the human embryo. The first microscope didn't come out till 1,000 years later. How could he have known? A man that couldn't read or write. And it goes on and on. So I see all these scientific miracles. Okay, there was no way to have known. So I'm like, okay, I see this book sung by people without even looking at it, man. Every Ramadan, bro. Every Ramadan, I see people get up in front of the mosque and lead the prayer for the whole month. They're called Hafiz. They literally recite this book without seeing word for word. And if they make a mistake, there's 100, 500 people that know at least one of those verses. Like everyone knows the verses. So I've witnessed many times in the last 42 years of my life where people pray and say the whole book. That's how God protected this book. That's why to me it blew my mind away as a Muslim. And that this religion said that God sent messengers and prophets throughout time all over the world. Throughout time. He didn't just pick one people. And my theory was the demonic realm shifted people away from God, through statues and idols throughout history. That's why a lot of the Anunnaki claims they make sense in some ways. But to me, that's just the deception of the devil using the same trick throughout time to get people away from the creator. If he types in, I just want people to hear this recitation, just to understand, and I think it's a good place to maybe we can pick it up next time. Type in on YouTube, Omar El-Hishami, The Pen, okay? And just listen to how amazing this is. Most people have never even heard a recitation of this book. You understand? The Quran is not original in English. It is only original in the Arabic language. No, that's not it, brother. You're doing it wrong. Go back. Go just type in O-M-A-R, not you, O-M-A-R, space, Hishabi, H-I, wait there, right there, no? H-I, there you go. Now click down and go down one more. Click that and then put the pen.
The pen?
Yeah, space and then the pen.
The pen.
I want the audience to understand the difference. Now click this and let's just listen to a little bit. This is the verse of the pen, the chapter of the Quran, the pen. Look at how it's recited, Danny. This is the miracle of this book. No book is recited like this. I don't speak Arabic. I'm not Arab. But tell me what you feel, even if you don't know the words. No. Pause. Which of you is afflicted with madness? So in this chapter of the Quran, a couple of things I just want to point out here. A, that's the Quran, brother. It's only original and it's Arabic. Do you see how it's sung? We believe that every other book God sent to earth was corrupted, and we can prove it. I can historically prove it whenever you want. They were corrupted. They were altered. There are contradictions in there that don't make sense to the original 10 Commandments. How can you tell me Jesus is God, and then in one verse he tells you, I'm not even good. Why are you calling me good? Only God's good. So which one is it? 10 Commandments said don't make pictures, don't make images, don't worship anything but God. But you guys are making pictures, statues, crosses, idols. Like, forget Muhammad. Explain. And I love how Christians go, well, what do the Muslims know? Because Muhammad came 600 years after Jesus. Well, how about Jesus came how many thousands of years after Moses? Who was he then to give a new rule or a new book? Your logic for that already, you cancel yourself out. They have no argument against that. For you to argue, well, why did Muhammad come after Jesus? And then who was Jesus after Moses? And that's why I love Islam. Islam says that all of these prophets worked for the same boss. You're not allowed to make images. You're not allowed to pray to anything but God. You don't pray to Saint Peter or Saint anyone. You pray to God. He doesn't share his power with anyone. And I say he's not even because he's a man. We can't even comprehend this being. I find scientific miracles in a book written by some guy in a cave that couldn't read and write. And even if he could, how the hell? There's like 100 to 200 scientific facts in that book that no one could have known. Like, for example, that the Dead Sea is the lowest point above sea level in the entire world. There was no way Muhammad could have known this. It's impossible. That's the same area that Sodom and Gomorrah, we believe, was smashed into the earth. That's why it's called the Dead Sea. And it turned out in the last century, we found out it is the lowest surface point on earth. How could the Prophet Muhammad have known that back then? There was no way to have measured that or known. Anywhere in the world, no one could have known that. So when I see scientific facts, I know algebra came from Islam. The science and the technology, where would we be without algebra right now? But we would be as advanced as we are?
I mean, is it possible that humanity, different parts of humanity and civilizations were more advanced mathematically or technically?
I agree.
Than we are today?
There was some fusion.
And we lost knowledge?
Absolutely. The part I love the most is like you have all these people online, like they believe in these, like the global agenda, which I do believe in, right? And they say, well, those buildings that came down on 9/11, I was in those buildings. We spoke about this. I know you've interviewed so many people, but if you go back to the previous 2 episodes, I think even the first one, I discussed how I was there that day underneath the building when it got knocked down, right? So it's not like I didn't experience this.
What were you doing there?
I was going to school, bro. Second year, sophomore year, I'm going to Pace University. Doors open, people screaming, yelling. I'm like, what the? I didn't know what was. I didn't even know the building's on fire above us. It was crazy. But I love how people go, I know that it was the Muslims didn't do it. They just blamed them to start war. Because there's a lot of people that believe that, right? I'm talking about.
What do they believe?
They believe
you're going really fast.
They
right
believe
now.
that those buildings were taken down to false flag and take, to do what they've done in the Middle East over the last 25 years.
Right.
There's large swaths of people that believe that.
Right.
Okay, I'm not even getting into that. But I'm talking about even non-Christians. What I find it funny is if you believe that that was a false flag and that those were destroyed by anyone else except the guy with the long beard who miraculously flew 2 jumbo jets into this building and they miraculously found the passport on the floor and they miraculously killed him and then dumped his body because they didn't want to give the American people the right.
Right.
I, as someone that was in the World Trade Center, I want to see his body. I deserve that justice.
Did you? I just saw this recently. I read something.
They just threw his body over. No pictures, no nothing. Come on, man.
Did you read the story about, and Steve, you're going to have to look this up to find the article, but there was a story that he was flown to Saudi Arabia by the CIA.
Fahrenheit 9/11, the doc had covered some of that.
He went to a hospital because he had some sort of like a thing with his liver or his pancreas.
Diabetes. No, he had diabetes.
Something was going on with him medically where he had an emergency procedure done in Saudi Arabia in a hospital. And this was like a year before 9/11. And he went to the hospital and he was being supervised there by like CIA people.
He definitely existed. I'm not denying his existence. He was a real person.
Who? Osama?
Bin Laden, yeah.
Oh.
There's people that think he's just a boogeyman. No, he existed. I just don't know if he was really alive. How do we really know, bro? I wanted to see his body.
Yeah.
I think the American people deserve to see his body. As a 9/11 survivor, and I hate to use that word, But as someone that was underneath those buildings that day and watched people die right in front, I thought hundreds of thousands of people were dead that day. I mean, I cried.
You were there right under the tower before
I
it
was
collapsed?
on the E train. Last stop is World Trade. I'm underneath it, man. I'm in the sub-levels coming up. I was probably on the last subway that ever went into the World Trade Center, ever. I actually have a clip of that on my it's a reel I have right now on my Instagram. It shows
Steve, did you find anything on that Bin Laden hospital visit?
But what I'm saying is,
No.
getting back to the original point, is if you believe that that was a false flag and all that, and that they weren't really responsible for it, then why do you hate Muslims so much? That group of people. I'm not saying all that believe that.
Right.
I find it to be a contradiction. If you feel that they use that as an excuse, then why so much animosity? Because there's a lot of people that believe that we don't know the truth about that day. And yes, we're off a tangent here, but that's what happens when we're together.
All right, here's the article that I was alluding to with Bin Laden. CIA agent alleged to have met Bin Laden in July. French report claims terrorist leader stayed in Dubai hospital. 2 months before September 11th, Osama Bin Laden flew to Dubai for 10 days for treatment at an American hospital where he was visited by a local CIA agent, according to a French newspaper, Le Figaro. The disclosures are known to come from French intelligence, which is keen to reveal the ambitious role of CIA and to restrain Washington from extending the war to Iraq and elsewhere. Bin Laden is reported to have arrived in Dubai on July 4th from Quetta in Pakistan with his own personal doctor, nurse, and 4 bodyguards to be treated in the urology department. While there, he was visited by several members of his family and Saudi personalities and CIA. The CIA chief was seen in the lift on his way to see Bin Laden, and later, it is alleged, boasted to friends about his contact. He was recalled to Washington soon afterwards. How fucking
And now
crazy.
he's probably in a ditch at the bottom of the Baltimore River.
This was posted by Anthony Sampson in The Guardian on Wednesday, October 31st, 2001.
Brother, there's just so much shady stuff going on, man. I'm trying to stop World War III from
Keep
breaking
going
out.
down?
Okay, maybe it already started.
This is fucking insane. So how do you explain that? How was he in an American hospital 2 months before 9/11 with CIA people there?
I'm not killing myself. I'm not suicidal. Say it for the record. Say it for the record, Danny Jones.
Beck Glover's not suicidal.
No, say it for yourself, too.
I'm not suicidal.
Yo, no
Far
matter
from
what,
it.
I don't give a fuck what they show you, ever. Because I just explained why you can't. Now, if you do, you're in trouble. So, how do you explain it, bro? Times don't match up. Story doesn't match up. You don't show me the guy's body. Okay, and I didn't. This is not what this episode was about, but that's why you watch the Danny Jones podcast. You never know which way it's gonna go. Danny, I am trying to reverse some of the damage that was created because of that day, because of that conflict, because of where it led. There's millions of people dead because of that day, man.
Are you familiar with like the history of Syria and Iran and how the idea of suicide bombers was started? Like it was called
Loosely, but you have different sects, right?
the poor man's nuke, I think is what they called it. It was
They gave them keys. You're gonna get these.
Bashar al-Assad's father was the one who, when I think the Reagan administration went into Syria during his administration, they wanted to try to find a way to push back the Americans, and then I think Assad went to Iran. And they met and they talked about this idea. That's where the whoever the leader of Iran was at the time.
It was probably his father, Bashar's father, probably.
No, but yeah, Bashar's father went to Iran to meet with whoever the head of Iran was at that time. That's where they
It was Khomeini, man, no? 89?
Yes, I think so.
80-ish.
I think you're right.
It had to have been Khomeini.
That's when they came up with the idea of
Because I know Reagan was in power when the hostages were being held, right? And he
Right,
got them
right, Mm-hmm.
released. Like, he's like, either you release these hostages or we're going to nuke you, or basically. And they
right.
released them right away under Reagan.
And then that's when they first started using suicide bombers.
It was not a concept of Islam.
And that's
like
how
originally.
right, understood. But that's when it first developed. And they started using that against the Americans in Syria. And then eventually Reagan pulled everybody out. They pulled all the Americans out because they didn't know how to deal with this.
But let's give
with
credit
this-
to the Japanese first with their kamikazes. They're the first true kamikazers.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
There's even a famous Albanian man who technically did that, but he didn't do a suicide bombing. He learned he's one of the most gangster people you ever read about in your life. Pull up. This is the most gangster. Is that just you can't classify as a suicide bomber, but it's a guy that basically, which is still forbidden in Islam. I think I've explained this in episodes
Well, here's
before.
the thing.
You
Here's
can never, under any circumstance in Islam, commit suicide, even if you know you're going to die.
Right. What I'm getting at is the creation of suicide bombing
Started in that time period,
in the
yeah.
Islamic world.
Was in that time. Between Iraq and Iran also, those
Yes.
wars is when it really started.
That's when it
And
created a different version of Islam, where somebody in Egypt, I can't remember the name of it, who it was now. Wahhabi?
I don't know if the Wahhabis were the ones, but to my understanding, Wahhabi movement was to create a version of Islam that has no mercy.
Yes.
And when the whole faith is about mercy.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
The first converts to Islam were really, literally prisoners of war. Mm-hmm. Okay? The prisoners of war are treated in such a fashion that they were like, this is how you treat your prisoners of war. We want to be like you guys. So they would convert because they're like, this is how you treat your prisoners. Now, you look at what they did over the last 20 years. They're chopping people's heads off in orange jumpsuits and filming it with camcorders. Like, this is not Islam.
Right.
To anyone that studies the religion. My whole point on this episode is, why are we not given the same respect? And why is there double standards? You want to accuse the prophet about being a pedo. What about all the scandals in the church? What about all the scandals in the church?
This Wahhabism is like a
Swept under the rug.
version of...
Swept under the rug. One of the largest denominations of Christianity, Catholicism, swept under the fucking rug in our time.
Yeah.
Forget 600 when
Yeah.
right now in our time.
Yeah, they're paying giant settlements. to get these
Thousands
people
and
signed.
thousands and thousands of victims across the globe in every nation. You want to talk about a scandal? So then you as a Christian or a Catholic, you really have the audacity to point fingers and say, he was a pedo. Yo, look in the mirror. Look in the fucking mirror and be real.
How old was she when she had Jesus?
So the
was
Christian
12.
scholars say if they all say that unanimously she was probably around the age of 12.
12, right.
When the father, based on Christianity, placed Christ into her womb, which is fine. That's past the age of puberty in 99% of the times, right? So she was of childbearing age at the age of 12. What I have a problem with is the attack of the character of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because you got to remember, you have the Quran and then you have Hadith. Hadith are what people think the Prophet Muhammad said. I heard him say this. I heard him say that. And some of those Hadith, his wife is the author of most of them. You know, a lot of them. The Prophet's wife that they always accuse him of being underage with her and all that stuff, because I'm avoiding certain words for, you know why.
Sorry, we can censor it.
So they accuse him of being a pedo. Well, I would say if he's a pedo, then all of Europe, all of America should shut their mouths.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Pull it up, maestro. Pull up marriageable age in the USA, my brother. And I want you to read this now. Go scroll down. Now, this is up on Wikipedia, but you can do your homework because most of you don't. You want Danny to do all the work for you, and he does a phenomenal job, folks.
Thank you.
Scroll down. Okay, I don't know if this is what I told you to pull up. Go back up. Did you leave the ones I told you or no? Okay, yeah, go down. Marriage age in the U.S. Here, let's start here.
There we go.
Let's start here.
Colonial
Start at age of
America.
consent. Start at age of consent. Let people go do their homework.
In 1275, in England, as part of a law, the Statute of Westminster in 1275, it was a misdemeanor to ravish a maiden within age, whether with or without her consent. The phrase within age was interpreted by jurist Sir Edward Coke to mean the age of marriage, which at the time was 12 years old.
Okay, 12 years old. Now we're going to go down deeper into this. So 1275 is almost 600 years after the Prophet, and they consider this a normal age to have intercourse. But go down. It gets
To
even better.
ravage a maid?
Go down even more. Start right there. Actually, go down a little more. Okay. Age of consent here in the U.S. Go down.
In Delaware, the age of consent was 10.
10 at 1871. Now stop. Pause there for a second. 1871, Danny.
71.
Okay. 1,300 years after the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And they said, no, that's too old. No, 10 is too old. We got to lower that to 7. I don't know if that's because it's Joe Biden's home state. I don't know.
Almost 100 years after America became a thing.
Okay. And they want to go now and try to prejudge and not in context. So let me give the context.
Wait. Until 1871 when it was lowered to 7 years.
Yes, that's why it's Joe Biden's home state, bro. What? Delaware, man.
That's a lot of
great
a lot of people's home state. A lot of politicians.
Let's zoom out, maestro. Continue down. 37 states, 1880. We're talking about 1,300, almost 1,300 years after the life of the Prophet Muhammad, 37 states set the age of consent at 10 years old. 10 states set the age to 12 and back and forth and so on and so forth. Okay? Hold that now. Let's go to the next one now. Pull up the royals in Europe. Let's pull it. This is America.
Yeah.
Okay, the age of consent was just changed a few years ago in New York. I think it was like 13, and they just officially changed it. Okay?
How long ago did they change it?
If I had a daughter and somebody wanted to marry her at 10, I would bury them alive.
Right.
I'm not defending in that aspect, but we need to put things into historical context. And we can't just point and say, oh, you Arabs, oh, you Middle Easterners, oh, your prophet this and you this. When let's look at Europe, man. These are the royals. People still love the royal
Look at Mary,
families.
bro. Mary was 12. She had not only was she married, but she was impregnated. She was cosmically impregnated
by the father. So was the father a pedo?
Probably.
But they don't have a problem attacking Muslims and creating Islamophobia and creating hatred. If we look at their ancestors, this is all of Europe. 15 years old, 13 years old, 12 years old. They were marrying. Now, there's a difference between being engaged, Danny, and consummating the marriage. They were consummating these marriages, bro. 8 years old to a 30-year-old. Look at Cecile of France. Okay?
Where's Cecile of France?
Right there, 12th century.
Oh, it's 12th century.
Okay.
8 to 9 was married.
Yeah, okay. All right, so look in the mirror.
Yeah, it's the stuff's ubiquitous.
Yes,
the stuff's ubiquitous.
Yes, because the rule of the world, up until about 100 years ago, really until feminism, right? Until their movement, women's movement.
Child trafficking was also ubiquitous back then too. Not only was marrying kids really young and then like doing like stuff with children like right after they hit puberty. I think the law in like ancient Rome was like if there was some sort of abuse of an underage kid, underage, they defined by prepubescent, it wasn't even like you don't even get in trouble. It was only like a civil lawsuit. Like I could, if there was damages, I could sue you or whatever.
These are centuries and centuries of the royals, princes, you name it, throughout all of Europe.
Oh my God.
Throughout of all of Europe. Yet most of the people that come from
8 or 9 Elizabeth of Cumin.
Okay, a Christian background here in the U.S. Go look at your grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, man. They were pedos. Bro. They were pedos. And you guys want to attack what? Now let me set the background of the Prophet's marriage. No one knew her age. She wrote Hadith. I was around 6. I was around 8. She didn't even know her own age. That's a fact. My grandmother, God rest her soul, born in Albania, they didn't keep documents. She didn't even know her own age, bro. That's a fact. I know Albanians that were engaged in the womb. They were engaged. Doesn't mean they consummated the marriage, but they were engaged. That's just the way the world was.
Right.
Families traded. You have a son, I have a daughter. That's how they kept ties. That's how they kept power. That's throughout the world.
Sure. It
Asia,
still happens today.
If we pull up Asia right now, same thing, but we don't have to. You guys go do your homework. So where am I going with all this?
Yeah, where are you going with this?
First of all, anyone that marries a 10-year-old today should be hung. Okay? I'm not saying it's right, but in context.